My name is Sarah, and I am 34 years old. I was standing in the living room of an incredibly lavish and expensive beach house in Malibu, California. Outside, the waves of the Pacific Ocean were crashing loudly against the large, pristine glass windows. But inside the house there was a strange, suffocating silence that you could cut with a knife. In one hand, I held my heavy suitcase, my knuckles turning white from my tight grip, and standing right in front of me was my own family. They were all looking at me like I was a stranger who had accidentally crashed their private celebration. My brother David had just told me, casually and without a hint of hesitation, that the master bedroom, which I had paid for with my own credit card, would be occupied by his college friends and their wives. Without even looking me in the eye, swirling the champagne in his glass, he told me that I could sleep on the small pull-out sofa in the basement. After all, I was single anyway, and they were the real family who needed more space. My mother, standing right next to him, fully supported David's statement, telling me in a very sweet but hollow voice that I should just adjust. After all, vacations are meant for having fun, and I shouldn't make a scene. For a moment, I looked at my mother's face, where there was absolutely no shame. Then I looked at David, who was smirking at his victory. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice even a fraction. I just took a deep breath and said in a very calm voice, "All right then, I'm leaving." And I actually walked out. I immediately put my phone on silent, got into my rental car, and drove far away from there. By the time the sun set that evening, I had 48 missed calls on my phone. Not a single one of those calls was meant to apologize to me. All those calls were simply because the person who was supposed to foot the massive bill for the next day's expensive yacht booking and the lavish dinner was no longer there. Nobody standing in that living room, not even me, had any idea what was coming next. Exactly 3 weeks later, that same arrogant brother of mine, David, was sitting in the large boardroom of my Seattle office, begging me for my professional and financial help to save his entire life, his reputation, and his house. I will tell you in detail how things reached that point and what really happened that day. But before that, if you have ever felt like an ATM or a disposable object in your own family, this story is absolutely for you. Let me take this story back a bit so you can see the whole picture. I work as a supply chain director at a massive international company based in Seattle. I have 65 highly capable people working under me. My job is no walk in the park. It's my responsibility to ensure that millions of dollars worth of precious cargo travels from one corner of the world to another without any hiccups, delays, or safety issues. When a massive system suddenly crashes, when a vendor commits a multi-million-dollar fraud, or when a shipment gets stuck in the middle of the ocean, I am the person they call at 2 a.m, and I am the one who fixes everything. My entire life revolves around logistics, data, numbers, and contracts. I double-check every single figure, meticulously read every invoice, and never sign a contract without reading the fine print. This strict habit and discipline are what made me so successful in my career at such a young age. I paid my own way through school. I sacrificed my sleep to earn scholarships, worked grueling double shifts at a small cafe during college, and survived on cheap noodles for years just to pay my tuition. Today, I own a beautiful penthouse on the 35th floor in downtown Seattle, and every piece of furniture, every painting, and every cup in that house has my name on the receipt. I like keeping my life organized. I never make decisions based on sheer emotion. I rely on facts. But my family lives in a completely different world. They live in Columbus, Ohio, and their world runs on appearances. My brother David is 38 years old. He calls himself a visionary entrepreneur and investor on LinkedIn, but to this day, I have never seen a single business of his actually succeed or turn a real profit. He always drives a brand new, expensive SUV, lives in a huge house with perfectly manicured lawns, and his wife Emily is always decked out in the latest designer clothes and expensive branded bags. My parents have always catered to David's every whim. They consider him the true heir, the star of the family. They live in this bizarre delusion where money is never an issue, where bills magically pay themselves, and where nobody ever talks about a budget. But the strange thing is, they have no solid or regular source of income. For years, I avoided asking myself the bitter question of who was actually funding this lavish lifestyle, these luxurious vacations, and all this grandstanding. I knew the truth, but I didn't want to admit it. Whenever they needed something, I would get a call. Sometimes they'd ask for $50,000 as an initial investment for David's latest revolutionary business idea. Other times, a $20,000 bill for fixing the roof of my parents' house would be forwarded to me. And sometimes, my credit card was suddenly needed for Emily's luxury spa trip. Every single time, I sent the money without asking any questions. I thought maybe this was what being a family really meant. I thought, if I don't help them, who will? I was an expert in supply chain. I knew how to connect things, and my family had turned me into their own personal bottomless ATM. I became a silent machine that filled every void in their lives, one that was never sincerely thanked, only used when needed and then forgotten. I was always standing on the edge of every family photo, and many times, I wasn't even invited to be in the picture at all. This whole saga and that Malibu trip actually started with a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was looking out the glass wall of my office at the Seattle skyline when my mother called. Her voice had that strange, sugary sweetness that usually meant she needed me to do a huge favor or pay a massive bill. With a lot of enthusiasm, she announced that David and Emily's 10th wedding anniversary was coming up, and they had all decided to spend a whole week in July at an incredibly luxurious beach house in Malibu. It was going to be a huge celebration. She told me David had found the perfect, stunning house, but confirming the booking required a huge credit card limit, which wasn't currently available on David's card. I instantly understood what that actually meant. It meant, Sarah, pull out your card and pay for it. I took a deep breath and said, all right, Mom, I'll book the house, but I'm going to need my own separate quiet room because I'll be taking some important office meetings and working from there. My mother agreed immediately. She confidently said, oh, Sarah, David has planned everything perfectly. The house has 5 large bedrooms, and David specifically saved the biggest master bedroom just for you since you're paying so much. I am a sensible professional. Verifying things is literally my job. So, that very night, I texted David twice to confirm. I asked if my booking was set and if I was getting the master bedroom. Each time, he replied with a smiley face saying, everything is set, Sarah. You have nothing to worry about. I took time off work, adjusted my critical projects with my team, booked an expensive flight, and waited for July. I landed at Los Angeles International Airport on a Tuesday morning, picked up a rental car, and drove down the Pacific Coast Highway to Malibu. The drive was beautiful, and I felt a strange sense of hope. When I arrived at the large wooden doors of that massive, gorgeous beach house, I thought maybe things would be different this time. Maybe this time I would truly feel like part of the family. Maybe this time they would appreciate what I had spent. But the scene inside was shockingly different from my expectations. In the living room, David, Emily, and my parents were drinking champagne out of expensive crystal glasses. There were also 3 very wealthy-looking friends of David's and their wives present. People I hadn't been told a thing about. Seeing me standing at the door, no one looked particularly thrilled. They just gave me formal smiles and went right back to their phones. David didn't even try to take my suitcase. He just looked at me and said coldly, "You're here, good. There might be some leftover sandwiches in the fridge for you. Check it out." I ignored his rudeness, took a deep breath, and calmly asked which room was mine so I could drop my bags, freshen up, and hop on an office call. That was the moment that changed my perspective on life forever. David placed his champagne glass on the glass table and said in a very calm, almost bored tone, "Actually, Sarah, there's been a slight change of plans. My friend Mark and his wife wanted some privacy. They wanted to relax away from the city crowd, so I gave them the master bedroom. Why don't you just put your stuff down on the sofa bed in the basement?" I looked at David. I thought maybe I had misheard. I said very clearly, "David, I paid the rent for this entire house on my card, and we had a clear understanding that I would get my room. I have to work too. I can't sleep on a basement sofa. I probably won't even get cell service down there." At that, Emily, who was standing right next to him, chimed in. Her voice had a sharp, sarcastic sting to it. Flipping her hair back, she said, "Oh, Sarah, why do you always make such a huge deal out of every little thing? You're single anyway. You don't even have a life of your own. What do you need such a big room for? We're couples. We're the real family. We need more space. You only ever think about yourself. Learn to make a little sacrifice for the family for once." Hearing Emily, I looked over at my mother. I thought surely she would speak up against this injustice, that she would reprimand David. But my mother averted her eyes, looked down at her champagne glass, and said softly, "Sarah, please don't make a scene here. What will the guests think of us? Just adjust a little. After all, vacations are meant for having a good time. I am a supply chain professional. I know very well that when a system becomes completely corrupted, when a vendor repeatedly stabs you in the back, you don't try to fix it. You terminate the contract forever." I looked at every single person standing in that large living room. I had spent my entire life, my entire career's earnings, working like a machine to cater to these people. I had paid every single one of their bills, big and small, and covered up every single one of their stupid mistakes from the world. And today, in this expensive house rented with my hard-earned money, I was being tossed into a dark basement like a useless piece of garbage. No anger flared up inside me. I didn't feel the urge to cry, nor did I feel like arguing with them. Inside me, there was just a very deep, cold, and clear silence. A bitter truth had presented itself, and I had finally, fully accepted it. I firmly grabbed the handle of my suitcase, which I had rested on the floor. I looked straight into David's eyes, without blinking, and without raising my voice a single decibel, I said very clearly, "All right, then I'm leaving." David laughed out loud. He thought I was making a childish joke or just throwing an empty threat. Looking at his friends with a smirk, he said, "Where are you going to go, Sarah? Your return flight isn't for a whole week. And besides, we have our private yacht party tomorrow, and you promised just yesterday to swipe your card and sponsor it. You aren't going anywhere. Go down to the basement and relax." I didn't answer him. I didn't feel the need to explain myself to them. I turned around, opened the heavy front door, and walked out. I started my rental car and began driving south down the Pacific Coast Highway. The car windows were down. The cool ocean breeze was hitting my face, and I felt a strange, incredibly comforting peace wash over me. I immediately turned off my phone's location tracking, and right there on the road, I booked an ocean view suite at a highly exclusive, luxurious, and private resort in Los Angeles. This was my own hard-earned money, and for the first time in my life, I was spending it solely on my own peace of mind, without an ounce of guilt. When I finally sat on the balcony of my gorgeous suite overlooking the ocean, I checked my phone. 14 missed calls from David, 20 from my mother, 8 from my father, and a few from Emily. I played one of the voicemails. My mother's voice no longer had that sugary sweetness. Instead, it was filled with deep panic and anger. She said, "Sarah, what is this madness? Where did you go? This is incredibly childish and embarrassing. All of David's cards are completely maxed out, and we have to pay the massive bill for tonight's dinner. We also have to put down the advance for tomorrow's yacht. Come back right now, Sarah. We'll talk to David and have a really nice mattress put on the basement sofa. A nice mattress. So that was my worth to them. The price of my 20 years of sacrifices and millions of dollars in investments was an extra mattress. Without replying, I powered off my phone completely. And that night, for the first time, I slept deeply. Without a morning alarm, without stressing over a project, and without the anxiety of paying my family's bills. For the next 3 days, I spent all my time entirely with myself. I spent hours at the resort spa, sat on the beach reading books, and listened to the sound of the waves for hours on end. In the silence of those 3 days, I processed everything that had been happening to me for the last 20 years. I opened a new Excel sheet on my laptop and started calculating every single dollar, every single cent I had sent to my family over the past decade. David's first so-called tech startup that folded in 6 months. David's second real estate project that tanked with my money. My parents' month-long trip to Europe, for which I booked the tickets. The massive down payment on Emily's new car. When I saw the final number at the bottom of that spreadsheet, my eyes went wide. The amount was so staggering that I could have bought another entire penthouse in Seattle without taking out a mortgage. I had invested a huge chunk of my life into a one-sided family business that was destined for bankruptcy from day one. And now, I was going to liquidate this failing enterprise, completely. After my vacation ended, I returned home to Seattle. I turned my phone back on. I thought maybe during those 7 days, someone would have realized their mistake and offered a heartfelt apology. Instead, my inbox was flooded with bitter, angry messages from David. He wrote that I had completely ruined his 10th anniversary, that he was humiliated in front of his friends because he couldn't pay for the yacht, and that they had to cut the trip short. Cursing at me, he called me an incredibly selfish, arrogant, and heartless person who didn't understand the meaning of a family's love. I didn't reply to any of those messages. I formulated a very calm, cold, and calculated professional strategy. I immediately called my bank and permanently canceled all the auto-pay transfers set up in David and my parents' names. I blocked all the premium credit cards for which they held supplementary cards in their wallets. In one fell swoop, I severed the entire supply chain of their lavish lifestyle. Exactly 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon, as I was wrapping up a crucial international vendor meeting in my office, my assistant gently opened the door to my office and said that David and my parents were waiting for me in the reception area. She noted that all 3 of them looked incredibly panicked and exhausted, as if they hadn't slept all night. I looked at my assistant and said in a very calm voice, "Take them to my large conference room and have them wait. Give them only plain water. No coffee, no tea." I walked into that room 15 minutes later. When I entered the conference room, I saw that David was a mess. That Malibu arrogance and pride were completely wiped from his face. The suit he was wearing was wrinkled. My mother's hands were shaking, and my father was staring at the floor. The moment I walked in, David immediately jumped out of his chair. He said in a desperate, helpless voice, "Sarah, thank God we found you. Why aren't you answering my calls? I've been calling you like a madman for the past week." I didn't rush. I walked over to my chair, pulled it out slowly, sat down comfortably, and opened my laptop, looking at the screen. Without even looking their way, I said in a very calm and cold voice, "I was working, David. My time is very valuable. Tell me, what do you want?" With trembling hands, David pulled some legal documents out of his briefcase and placed them on the table in front of me. "Sarah, I'm in massive trouble. My friend Mark, the one I gave the master bedroom to in Malibu, had promised to invest $2 million in my new logistics project. Relying on that, I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in advances to some major vendors and took the rest of the inventory on credit. But now Mark has backed out. He's not picking up my calls. I don't have a single dollar left to pay those vendors the rest of their money. If I don't give them $200,000 in cash by this coming Friday, they are going to file criminal charges against me for fraud and forgery. My house is already fully mortgaged, Sarah. You have to help me. You know the logistics business inside out. Please, use your influence. Talk to these vendors and get a small bridge loan approved for my company. You can fix all of this with just one phone call. My mother, who had been quiet until now, started crying loudly. She stepped forward and tried to grab my hands, but I smoothly pulled my hands back. Sobbing, she said, "Sarah, please save your brother. He'll be out on the streets. His career will be over. Emily will leave him. He won't be able to survive this. You are our only and last hope. You know we are a family, and family always comes through for each other." I took a very deep, long breath. I looked at those legal documents on the table, but I didn't even touch them. I lifted my gaze and looked straight into David's eyes. I said, "David, do you remember what you told me exactly 21 days ago in that lavish living room in Malibu? You proudly declared that you and Emily were the real family, and that I was just a lonely, selfish person who only needed a small sofa in the basement." David's face instantly went pale, as if someone had drained all the blood from his body. He stammered, "Sarah, that was just a joke. I was drunk on champagne. Please don't hold on to those old stupid things. I'm literally going to be ruined. I'm going to jail." Without showing a shred of emotion, I turned my laptop toward David. On the screen was that incredibly detailed, extensive spreadsheet I had created. Emphasizing every single word, I said, "Over the past 3 weeks, I conducted a little audit of my personal finances, David. Every line on this spreadsheet represents every single dollar I've given to you, to Emily, and to Mom and Dad over the last 10 years. The grand total comes to $780,000. That is the money I earned through sheer hard work, sacrificing my sleep, giving up my weekends, and burying my own needs. And what did you do with my blood, sweat, and tears? You bought a fake lifestyle with it. You bought club memberships. You stole the room I paid for just to impress those selfish friends of yours who won't even pick up your phone calls now instead of helping you." A terrifying silence filled the room. The only sound was the low hum of the air conditioner in the ceiling. My father opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. My mother just kept staring at that $780,000 figure written on the screen. I continued in a very cold, clear, and professional tone. "David, I am a successful supply chain director. My job is to immediately terminate bad vendors and corrupt systems that underperform and only waste my time and resources. And as a family, you have never given me anything. You have only taken my money, my precious time, and my self-respect. You aren't here today because you missed me or because you feel any remorse for what you did. You came running to me today simply because your own bank account is completely empty and your rich friends have abandoned you." David had real tears in his eyes now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fear. Pleading, he said, "So what do you want, Sarah? I'll do whatever you say. Are you really going to watch your own brother get handcuffed and sent to jail? Do you have no pity for me at all?" I answered very calmly, "I don't want anything from you, David. And whatever this mess is, it's your own responsibility. I am not going to help you anymore. Not today, not tomorrow, and not ever in the future. My bank is permanently closed for you people. You will not get a single dollar from me, nor will I speak to any of your vendors or suppliers. Your business failed because of your own mistakes. So you're going to have to face the consequences like a man. Sell that big, luxurious house, sell your expensive cars, cancel your club memberships, and tell Emily to put down her designer bags and find a job. That's what a real family does, David. They work together through hard times. They don't live the high life on someone else's blood, sweat, and tears. My mother stood up from her chair and began to weep loudly. Yelling at me, she said, "Sarah, how can you be so cruel and heartless? You have so much money. You have such a big reputation. You could fix all of this in a minute if you wanted to. You are tearing your own family apart with your bare hands. You will never find peace." I looked at my mother, and for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely no pity or sadness for her tears. I said in a very stern voice, "Mom, I didn't tear the family apart. The truth is, you never considered me family in the first place. You just treated me like a life insurance policy and a bank. And today, I've completely canceled that policy. You have exactly 5 minutes to get out of this building, or I will be forced to call security." I closed my laptop, stood up from my chair, and walked out of that conference room without looking back even once. Behind me, I heard David slam his hand on the table in anger and frustration. I heard my mother sobbing uncontrollably, but my footsteps didn't falter for a single second. I walked straight into my office, closed the heavy glass door, sat in my chair, and took a very deep, long breath. I felt as if an incredibly heavy mountain had permanently been lifted off my shoulders. The burden of responsibility, the guilt, the loneliness that I had been silently carrying for the last 20 years. I had finally left it all behind in that conference room forever. My life, and my family's life, changed drastically after that day. David had to sell his luxurious house for pennies on the dollar. His pretentious business went completely bankrupt. He and Emily now live in a small, rented 2-bedroom apartment in a very modest part of Columbus. I've heard that David is now working as a lowly salesman at a used car dealership, and Emily works at a grocery store. For the first few months, my parents tried hard to emotionally blackmail me. They had relatives call me and leave long messages, but I just changed my phone number. I removed every person from my life who only loved me for my utility and my money, and I did it without a shred of regret. Today, I am freer and happier than I have ever been. Whenever I go on vacation, I book the absolute best master bedroom for myself. I no longer have to prove to anyone that I matter or that I have worth. I have defined my own worth. And the biggest lesson I've learned from this entire ordeal is that sharing blood doesn't make someone your family. True family respects you, values your existence, and stands by you during your hardest times, not people who only talk to you when they see your bank balance. I completed the most difficult audit of my life, and the balance sheet that emerged gave me a brand new, beautiful life. A life where I am not at the mercy of anyone's basement sofa. If you are also at a suffocating point in your life where you feel like you're only living to fulfill other people's expectations, stop. Do an honest audit of your own life. Look at where you are investing your relationships, and look at what you are getting in return. Sometimes, taking steps to save yourself might look cruel to the world, but in reality, it's the biggest necessity of your life. Thank you so much for listening to this long, true story from BookBite Studio. I fully hope that Sarah's story has given you a new perspective on the relationships in your own life. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, share your thoughts and experiences with us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, BookBite Studio. We will continue bringing you true, emotional, and deeply relatable stories like this in the future. Take care of yourself, and always know your worth. Thank you.